Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We'll begin in approximately 5 minutes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We will begin in around 2 minutes. Hey, everyone. We'll begin in 1 minute, and then Victoria will take it away.
Good afternoon and happy Women's History Month, and welcome to today's webinar, Digital Pioneers Empowering Women in Tech. Nobel and Pulitzer Prize-winning author Toni Morrison said, "There is no modernity and no justice without the talent and passion and steely intelligence of women." Women have long been underrepresented in the tech industry, as statistics show that women held 35% of tech jobs in the US at the end of 2023. While that number is steadily growing as more young women are inspired and empowered to enter the industry, there's still a long way to go. My name is Victoria Hodge, and I'm an Associate Product Manager and Moderator here at Leadership Connect. I'm joined by a group of esteemed panelists, Fatima Terry, Deputy Director of Digital Service at USDA, Sherilyn Pascoe, Director of NIST, National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, Luana Jones, Senior VP and Chief Technology Officer for United Way Worldwide, Jamie Danker, Senior Director of Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions at Venabel LLP, and Kara Gunnell, Senior Director of Public Policy at the Indian Technology Forum. Today, we hope to offer industry knowledge, inspiration, and guidance. Whether you're a newcomer or a seasoned pro, I am sure you'll walk away from today's panel with some new insights. We encourage our audience to participate via the Q&A feature, as we will save time at the end for audience questions. I'd like to start by emphasizing again that you all have accomplished great feats in your career, and that's because you're driven by a mission. I'd love for you to tell us what has inspired you to reach new heights. Let's start with Fatima. You have to unmute. No
There we
worries.
go. Always having technical difficulties in tech, right? First of all, thank you all so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with such an amazing, just brilliant all-star group with, this entire panel. I think for me, one of the biggest things that has driven me in my career is just representation and gender equality, period. I think there are different ways that growing up in the areas and in the ways that I grew up, which is not, no one is the same. I've realized that there really has to be representation in masses. And sometimes even with personalities, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm an introvert. It's hard for me to voice out, voice my opinion, voice, whatever it is I'm thinking, what I need. And it's took me a long time to actually work on that. So now that I do have a voice and I'm continuing to work on that, I mean, it's just even the recognition that other people, you are the voice for other people, and they also are working on themselves. So I think for me, again, one of the biggest drivers of how I got here was because I am the embodiment of representation and gender equality.
That's very inspiring. Sherilyn, what about you? What drives you?
Yeah, thank you so much as well for inviting me to participate in this really wonderful conversation on women in technology. We've been doing a lot of these conversations this month and hope that these conversations will continue throughout the year because they're just so important to the work that we do. For me, it's all about the people that I work with. I'm now in a position where I've reached where I want to be, and it's about kind of supporting the rest of my team to advance their goals. I'm the director of the NIST National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. I oversee a team of about 200 engineers that are dedicated every day towards research to solving cybersecurity challenges. I'm so driven by and inspired by them. I'm inspired by our mission of kind of advancing technology, of helping people. And so for me, it's really important just to find, people that we want to work with every day. It's obviously maybe even more important than choosing what we all want to work on. I have a great team. For example, just before this panel, we were celebrating Pi Day. We had pizzas, we had a pie competition. We actually had 18 different pies that we had to work through to judge. I'm feeling a little bit of a sugar high at the moment, but it is that kind of teamwork and that collaboration that drives me and really drives all of us to work towards our goals together.
Definitely, it's all about the people that we work with and helping them succeed as at the same time as we're driving towards our goals. Luana, what inspires you?
So thank you as well for allowing me to participate in the session today. So for me, really, it's been about a combination of personal passion and then a sense of purpose and then a commitment to make a positive impact in my community. So I needed to have a clear sense of who I was, and that really has been instrumental in driving my journey. Even from an early age, I've been drawn to challenges that have aligned with my values and my aspirations. So whether it's addressing social inequalities in my personal nonprofit or advancing technology for the betterment of my community, just knowing that my work has a potential to make a meaningful difference really has been a powerful motivator for me.
Thank you, Luana. Jamie, how about you?
Hi, and thanks again for inviting me to be part of this panel. Sherry, I'm curious like who won the pie contest and what flavor it was. Now I'm hungry. So what drives me? I think there are a lot of things, but I would say for my career journey, it's mainly been curiosity, and sometimes boredom. Frankly, kind of knowing when it's time to move on to something else because you've done something tried and true. I started my career off at the Government Accountability Office as an auditor on the IT team. Now it's called Cybersecurity Services, but that's how I kind of fell. I identify mostly as a privacy professional. So it was a really good opportunity to kind of learn like, what's the criteria? What are the laws and regulations that federal programs have to abide by? And, getting that experience with study design and how do things operate when you're kind of from the oversight angle. And then I was just very curious as like, what would it be like if I was an implementer? So I made that switch over, did a little consulting, and then converted back to federal service at Homeland Security, where I was in the different privacy roles throughout Homeland Security for almost 10 years. And, I really loved kind of seeing the different angles, like one being part of a centralized privacy program where you kind of develop the guidance and the infrastructure for the entire agency and the components. And then I had opportunity to go down and be, a program level privacy officer and have closer interactions with the program, the technology, the policy, the lawyers. I love being that kind of communicator. And then, someone who was the chief privacy officer for what was then called the National Programs and Protection Directorate reached out and said she was going to be retiring. Would I be interested in coming over and doing a transfer to become the chief privacy officer? And so I was like, great, I haven't done the privacy officer role. So I took that challenge on too and got to build an amazing team that still exists today. And now it's the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency. So had a great time doing that and then left civil service about 5 years ago and was at a small IT services firm. And I got to support NIST's privacy engineering program that I had worked with when I was in government on the digital identity guidelines and got to help draft the NIST privacy framework. So it's kind of that curiosity. And then now I'm at the point where I'm trying to help clients here. I'm at a law firm, but I'm not a lawyer, helping companies and different types of organizations of all sizes adopt privacy and cybersecurity risk management practices. So it's just sort of interesting to kind of be on sort of the oversight side, learn what the criteria is, and then switch over to like, how do you implement it? And then kind of switching back to advising. So I kind of like that. Can't decide which I like best, but I think it's that curiosity of being able to really see everything from all different angles really appeals to me.
Thank you, Jamie. I can definitely see how jumping between those different roles is driven by that curiosity. Kara, what inspires you? What motivates you?
Hi. Well, I have to admit, I'm very flattered to be part of this wonderful panel. Everybody has great stories and very inspiring journeys. Specifically, I mean, I want to add on and totally agree with Luana and Jamie to their points on doing a better purpose and serving community, and also sometimes getting frustrated with how processes work, whether it be in the private sector, which I did spend a lot of time working in legislatures. Just as a matter of background, I'm working for a company called the Engine Technology Forum. So we deal with internal combustion engines, equipment manufacturers, fuel supply, and things that affect people every day. So it's very much like emerging. It's not going away. New development. So it's constantly evolving. And I had previously worked, like I said, in government, doing state relations and things, and then also in the private sector. And I found at some point, even working as a contract lobbyist and consultant, that I was just, for lack of a better term, just like, achieving a goal and checking a box off to make somebody happy or, fulfill the client duty. And I chose to I went back to grad school to study environmental law, and I really wanted to focus on something that had a future and where I could help people. And, there were constant changes and challenges. So I'm really excited and happy to be in a role where I can have positive influence, and there's so many perspectives and elements to enjoy. It's challenging, but it's fun. And I mean, there are benefits to both sides, private, public, but also having the experience in both and just learning and taking all those experiences and being able to develop it into something that will have a positive impact on community, environment, and all that is very rewarding and inspiring.
Thank you, Kara. I think what I heard from all of you is that a big part of what drives you is looking to others and making sure that they can succeed as well. And so one question that I want to make sure that we ask is, why is this important? Why is it important for women to join the technology space? Let's start with Luana.
It's really not just about achieving gender parity, but it's about unlocking untapped potential and driving innovation, right? So women bring a unique perspective. Their problem-solving approaches are different, their experiences are different, and that enrich the creative process and then lead to, more robust solutions. So by encouraging women to join technology, I mean, we could tap into a broader talent pool and foster a culture of innovation. The other thing I wanted to mention is that empowering women in technology also has a broader societal impact. Women role models in tech inspire our future generations, especially around STEM. And so closing that gender gap and in those critical areas, and then driving progress in fields like healthcare and climate change and education. So it's not just a matter of equality, but really it's a strategic imperative for us to make sure women are represented.
Definitely, we bring innovation to that space. Fatima, why is this important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I still have a lot of feels when this question kind of, is asked of me, because at the end of the day, I think one thing that I have to recognize is that there still is inequality, between genders. And particularly for me, when I was kind of thinking about even my talking points for this particular question, I was starting to get really fired up because the stats are there, right? I think like a lot of people come in, they're like, oh, the study of it. No, the stats are there. Anybody can look on Google for any study that basically says that women are still underpaid to a man, and particularly in the tech workforce. However, beyond that, I think one thing that really fires me up is the fact that women, particularly control over 31.8 trillion in spending. So they are the top consumer globally, right? And within the US. So not only that, beyond that, I think like women also influence 70 to 80% of business decisions for buying and for acquiring and for whatever, right? Movement of influence, of power, of different things. So innovation is definitely a big piece of that. But it's also because it's coming back to the consumer, right? Like the consumer is us. So to me, that is extremely important. And when I think about from a workforce perspective, so I'm an industrial organizational psychologist by trade. I'm a subject matter expert in STEM and workforce. I've worked for the government for a while and done a bunch of things in my career. But I think for me, it's a disservice when I look and I kind of see, well, is women part of the talent acquisition strategy for sourcing and recruiting and retention and et cetera? And if it's not, it's a disservice, really, because again, it comes back to the consumerism, that influence piece. And then it comes back, obviously, to the innovation piece, as Luana has mentioned. And so, I mean, one of the biggest things that I also want to point out to kind of close this is, I mean, even with AI, right? AI right now is this big thing. It's ever evolving. People are jumping on the boat. We're testing, we're piloting. I mean, 90% of recent targeted AI attacks are on women. So women have to come into the tech space so that we can consume, and then we can innovate, and then we can also create these safe spaces for ourselves, right? So I think for me, it's like a combination of different pieces that really just fire me up on why it's not an optional thing. It's a requirement. We need to be part of the workforce for tech.
Definitely. Jamie, what about you? Why do you think this is such an important topic? Why is it important for women to join the technology space?
Gosh, I have to follow Fatima with that. Those were awesome comments. +1 to everything, and she and Luana had to say. I guess I would just say purely from like an IT perspective, we're always taught about like requirements gathering and how important that is. So if you're only gathering requirements from one segment of the population, your solution isn't going to reflect like everyone. So I think it's really important that you engage women, diverse women, and all types of things. I can think like the group that I sit in now is the cybersecurity risk management group. And we've grown a lot recently, and bringing in, I think from the last 4 analyst hires, 3 of them are women. They're all awesome and really brings all these cool, unique perspectives. And I love that because I think in cybersecurity, it's really hard to find those senior leaders. So how do you bring them in and grow them? And I think that's an example of, bringing people in at the analyst level or, mid-level, so we can grow them into the leaders for tomorrow so that our solutions can be more representative.
Thank you. I think that piece of bringing in parity at every level is also so important. Sherilyn, why do you find this to be an important issue, the issue of women in tech?
I mean, it's a very important issue. I think, echoing the comments that were made previously, I also have to question though, why do we have to ask this question, right? It would be a pretty silly panel to be on if we were asking the question, well, why is it important for men to be in the technology space? I think inclusion is very important, right? I mean, at NIST, we're a research institution. We have to continually innovate. To do that, I need teams with members that think differently, that challenge each other, that push each other to be stronger, and people from different backgrounds, different educations, different experiences are so important, to push that innovation further. I also want to see kind of more role models in public speaking opportunities. I think it's really great that this is an all woman panel that we're on today. It's one thing to have women, in these roles of power in the technology space, but we also need to increase visibility, of women. And so when I became director of the NCCOE, one of the first things I did was I put in place a no manel rule for all of our events that we have at the center. I thought it was going to be really easy to enforce, a really low bar, but it's actually become really difficult to enforce. One of the things that we realized was, well, we have a handful of project teams that actually don't even have a single woman on the team. So when the project teams are talking about their work, they were having the difficulty with the no manel rule. And so now we're kind of having to delve a lot deeper into, okay, how are we building our teams from the beginning, so that we can kind of increase the diversity of the teams and increase the visibility of the conversation that we're trying to produce.
That's such an important piece, is the visibility, being able to see those role models and inspire that next generation. Tara, how do you believe this is so important? What about this issue is important?
I absolutely agree with everybody's comments so far, and takes away a lot of the things I plan to say, but I will definitely reiterate the fact that women do have a unique perspective on all things. I mean, I think we're very time oriented, solution oriented. And I think sometimes, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, where you ask anyone, sometimes man, why do we do it that way? And you get the response, well, that's how it's always been done. And that is like one of the single most frustrating answers to a question I receive. And it's just like, well, I mean, but why couldn't you do it this way? Or wouldn't it be easier? And I think it's just like I think we have a lot more responsibilities to balance, in addition to always having the need to be more represented and have our voices heard. So you always have to be the smartest person in the room, or be twice or more as prepared as everybody else, to be taken seriously in some situations. Not all, but I mean, it happens. So being realistic, I mean, on top of that, and then you're expected to, manage your personal life and do all the other things you're expected to do as a female. I think it's sometimes we have better ideas and solutions, even if it's not super groundbreaking in the tech field. It's a perspective that needs to be included and voiced, because sometimes I feel like there are things that are missed just simply because nobody else spoke up and said, hey, couldn't this be done better? Or what about if we change this or add that and make it, a better functional, user-friendly piece. So I think just incorporating all facets of what we do and having that other, element of multitasking and just intuition play a huge role.
Definitely. Luana, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add was I think it's incumbent upon us being in the roles that we're in to encourage the diversity of thought and contributions, especially if there are women within the organization. So I'll just share a quick story. So not at United Way, but a couple other companies prior. I think I was one female of color in a whole department of 1,500 engineers. So for me, I mean, you mentioned about your voice not being heard, and there were no mentors or supporters who could actually make sure that my voice was heard, or someone to ask, hey, Luana, do you have an opinion about it? Do you want to weigh in on it? So I think in our roles as leaders within our prospective organizations, I think it's important for us to also kind of draw out the diversity in thought if there are women within the department or we come across women within the department. So I just wanted to say that.
Definitely. And it's inspiring that you all are in those positions where you're able to make those decisions and help highlight that diversity of thought piece. One thing that I noticed that all of your answers kind of brought to the forefront is that women do face unique challenges in the workplace, especially in these male-dominated fields like technology. And so I want to ask you all, how have the challenges that you've faced impacted your journey, and how have you worked to overcome them? Let's start with Jamie.
I feel like I've been pretty fortunate. I've had good mentors. And actually my first mentor was a man in counsel's office at GAO who kind of taught me everything about the Privacy Act of 1974 and really kind of helped. I still keep in touch with him today. Even when he retired, brought him in as a subcontractor on a project and like continue to kind of touch base. I think it just kind of all links back to that curiosity and being willing to take a risk, which I think as I've gotten older, I'm more willing to do. Starting off a career where you're like an auditor, you kind of look at the world as this is how it should be. And then when you transition over to more of the operational side of the house, you realize that, you can't let perfect be the enemy of the good, and you have lots of competing priorities in an operational environment. So, yeah, I don't know where else I was going with that, but I think there have been lots of folks who kind of helped me on the way. And, I have not challenges, my name's Jamie, Jamie. I remember being at Homeland Security and showing up to meetings sometimes, and they said, well, we're just going to wait for Mr. Danker to show up. I was like, well, Mr. Danker's at home right now, and I'm Jamie. And so, just kind of make a joke out of it. And, people get a little embarrassed, but they just kind of laugh it off. And, just kind of claim your space at the table is sort of my advice for that is, you have a right to be there just as much as everybody else, and your voice should be heard.
100% claim your space at that table. I feel like that's the best piece of advice I think you can take away, is to just own it.
I would
Fatima.
definitely, not to cut you off, but I would
Definitely.
chime in on that
Yeah.
very hard, like about taking your seat at the table. I think that is something sometimes women, I don't know if it's like instinct or just like conditioned, but I think we're always more reluctant to, take that seat at the table. And I think that's something as a mentor and helping the next generation that we should all be more inspired and empowered to do, and not feel like, oh, well, there are these seat cards here and I'm not allowed to be in the front row and I'm not, you know what I mean? And I think there's unfortunately some kind of natural instinct to default to, you know, the second, third row, thinking that it's reserved for somebody else. But I totally agree with Jamie, and you've got to just claim your seat at the table. So sorry to chime in on that, but I really enjoyed that.
No, it's perfect. I think, I mean, it's inspiring also to kind of just recognize that there's places where you should just raise your hand and take over and take charge. Fatima, do you have any thoughts on the unique challenges that women face and maybe the ways and strategies that you've taken to overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, I had a little bit of a different road. I just I just for if folks kind of a little bit about me, just personally, I am an immigrant. I'm a Latina, so I was born in Peru. I grew up in the United States when I came here 2 years old, and life was hard. My parents didn't have a network. My parents didn't have, when I graduated like college, or even when I went to decide where I was going to go to college, it was like live 1 mile away from home. We're happy, which is like typical cultural Latino cultures and other cultures as well. But it was just like, don't go away, don't go too far. And it was really hard for me because I think when, I again got into the workplace, I was almost like a deer in headlights of how do I start this? How do I even begin this? And I mean, just throw in that introvert piece, it's really hard. And I struggled. And I think for folks, like, again, just kind of bringing in a different diverse perspective, because it can be hard for some folks, especially if it's hard for you to communicate, or again, I had a lot of issues with voicing out my needs, or even, I just didn't want to bother folks because I just rather put my head down and just, coast through the masses and hopefully, see if I could succeed in that way. And that's just not the case. This is not the environment for that, unfortunately. You really do have to elbow your way to the table. And so how do you do that, right? If you're someone who naturally that just doesn't come to you. And I think for me, one of the things was observation and listening. And I mean, even starting with like the beginning of, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing that? How are you, and I'm not going to tell you my age, but when Facebook first started, it's like, what is this Facebook? What are you doing here? Because it was for colleges and universities at the time when it started. So it was like, what is this thing? How are you using it? So, it's like things like that I think I started to realize, oh, well, I can learn. I'm processing this information. I think once I got into the workforce, the same thing, like to my colleagues, hey, can you teach me a little bit? What are you doing? How can I, and just observing and it's a skill, right? Not everybody, it's a skill to reskill, I always say, yourself, like communication, observation, listening in different ways, empathic listening, or listening with visuals and things like that. So, I mean, there are free resources, there are open MOOCs, like, open learning sources out in the universe and Google and the Internet of Things. So I think if that's something that you feel, you need to go and acquire or dive and be, experimental, just as Jamie has said, be curious, right? Well, go and take care of yourself, and apply yourself when you go into different environments to say, well, how are you doing this? So you can take back and create and customize how you want to interact with the world, how you want to, get yourself and push yourself and coach yourself or mentor yourself, to elbow yourself through, to the table. Because it's hard, it's hard. And so, that's pretty much what I have. And I know we had a question related to that from Jordana. So, I just yeah, it's just kind of observing, connecting, but observing and then teaching yourself and then applying and then kind of experimenting and pivoting until you're comfortable.
Thank you. And I think recognizing that it can be a challenge that you can upskill, and even if it doesn't come naturally, I think is so important. Sherilyn, what about you? What do you believe about the unique challenges that women might face, and what is your advice about how to overcome them?
Yeah, so I agree with what has said previously. I mean, I think just adding that, especially as I've kind of increased my visibility and my profile in the cybersecurity space, I talk a lot at conferences and events, and so I meet a lot of people. The little kind of criticisms add up, and they wear on you. I mean, adding to what Jamie said, I've been called Mr. Pasco way too many times. I've People do not, when I introduce myself, I have been questioned, that people do not believe that I am who I say I am, or that I've accomplished, what I have accomplished. Little things like, when I go to an event and I wear a dress and the AV tech doesn't know where to put the mic, because you're not wearing pants or a blazer. It's these little things that kind of add up and wear on you over time. You really have to have, some, it took a lot of self-reflection. It took to realize that I needed, more confidence in myself, to know that, I'm good enough to be there, and that I'm good enough to do my job and the next job. Because, even though we all have support systems, it all comes down to really believing in yourself, that you can do it, that you're strong enough, you're smart enough, because you are. And really, I think we're sometimes a little bit too self-critical of ourselves, but we really have to be our own kind of biggest advocate as we go about the world. So that's my little kind of push that's gotten me through, my last couple of years.
Thank you. And I think being your own biggest advocate is a great piece of advice there. Luana, what about you? How do you feel about the challenges that women face, and what advice do you have about how to overcome them?
Kind of building on what I've heard already. Obviously, you have to believe in yourself first and foremost, but you also have to make sure that you build a network of folks who believe in you and mentors who can recognize and then amplify your contributions. So it's not enough to just believe in yourself. You've got to have folks within either your organization or within your network who can really help to build you up and provide opportunities, if they can, for you to be able to shine and share your skills. It's not one or the other. Really, it's about both. And it doesn't stop. It's not like, early on in your career, you face these challenges. You will continue to face these challenges throughout your career, no matter how long you've been in your space or in your career, even in technology. It doesn't go away. You always have to still prove yourself. So just keep going.
I love that. Just keep going. And what you spoke to about the different types of challenges that you might face early on in your career versus later on, I'd love to kind of dive into that a little bit more with Fatima and Kara. So for people who are just coming to this field, who are brand new, what do you say to them? How do you encourage them? What advice do you give them? Let's start with Fatima.
Well, I'm going to piggyback of Luana. That's literally what I wrote down. I was number one, create your tribe. Who is your tribe? And I think throughout my entirety of my career, and just kind of, again, with that experimental piece of who do you connect with, how do you learn, how do you progress and push yourself? I mean, my tribe today, as soon as I come into a workplace, is number one, a coworker in your immediate, or someone in your immediate space that you feel you can trust, you can talk to, you can learn from, you can share. Number two, immediately finding, if you can, a coach or a mentor, depending on, what level of professional, experience, career you are today. And so they're different, right? A coach, and even for executives, like an executive coach as well. I mean, I'm an executive coach, and it's hard, it's really, really hard, and it's always needed. It's always needed. Even if you're the top CIO, CEO, COO, it doesn't matter. It really does not matter. So I think for me, that's kind of the second thing. The third one is when you enter something new, find yourself a buddy, find yourself someone that you're like, hey, is this right? Is this, gain some organizational acumen skills by getting yourself, a buddy, and having some raw conversations, and helping yourself kind of like push yourself forward. I mean, and then I personally, this is a really passionate one of passionate like tool of mine, but a set of advisors. I think like once you're in your career, and essentially as you keep moving forward, there are some people and some special gems that you collect along the way, from different workplaces or different communities or different whatever engagements, activities that you're like, we really gel well, and you're very smart, and this. And so, I have a collection of advisors, and now I'm like, oh, this policy just came down, like, I call this person and I'm like, can you tell me about, what is OMB really trying to say here, And so it's a collection of friends that I truly love. And the same goes both ways. They invest in me, they empower me, they support me, and I do the same for them. And so I think for me, like as soon as I start a new job, that's pretty much what I'm doing within the first 30 days, of my position or whenever I get into a new environment. So I think for me, that's definitely, number one. The second thing is career building. I mean, even if you're new, even if you just graduated and you're just like, I don't really know what's going on, go to your from a person who has I've been an acting chief learning officer at the Office of Management Budget, which is part of the White House. I mean, I will tell you, I know folks are like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to bother. No, you're not bothering anybody. Go straight to your HR, go straight to your learning and development, teams or anybody that can provide you resources to say, where are you skill wise? Where do you want to go? Let's build your plan, even if it's by increments of, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, whatever, because and even if you don't know where you're going, right? Seek and utilize and really leverage all of the resources that you have to help you career build, because you can take advantage of time and you kind of start formulating an idea and a vision of where you want to go and how you can do it. And it really is a boat that a lot of it takes a whole community of people to support all of these initiatives. And I know, because I mean, I've had to stand them up by myself. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of every single resource and benefit that you have at your disposal, because other people might not have that, right? And so it's just like the time is now or never, and it's investing on you. And I think someone had said this in the panel. It's like self-care is the number one thing. Take care of yourself, because you never know what's going to happen in life, and you can move on and everything will be fine, but take care of yourself, right? And so I think for me, that's the number one thing that I had to learn in a good way and sometimes in a hard way, but investing in yourself. It's my career, it's my life. I only live one life, so I have to really take care of it.
Definitely, like investing in yourself, but also taking advantage of that community around you. Kara, what about you? What advice do you have someone who's very early on in their career? What do you look back and tell some of the people you might mentor?
Well, I would just follow up on Fatima's last comment, and it's something I read once, and having played music growing up, there's no dress rehearsals in life. So that was something that always stuck with me. So you gotta, carpe diem everything. And you don't want to look back and say, oh, I should have spoke up or I should have done this. You don't want to, I mean, if you have an idea, then you should just say it. But I will preface that with saying, as a female, I think sometimes you have to be smarter and more clever in how you approach things. I mean, we've all probably been in a room where the men are just kind of, they already have like some presumption that they're smarter or don't have to work as hard. So you have to be more prepared. You have to know answers to the questions. I mean, I hate to say this, but because I feel like we're having a nice and open conversation and honest. I would say sometimes you almost have to ask questions that you already know the answers to, just to, progress the dynamic of the conversation and plant ideas. And in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to do that. But I think sometimes you also have to read the room. You have to understand the egos. You have to understand the politics. You have to understand so many perspectives, when you're in a situation where you can make a difference and make a suggestion or have some influence, to know how it will play out. And honestly, having to do your homework on that is something I think starting out would be a tip that I wish I had gotten before, and not just be like, oh, I have a good idea. You have to back it up. You have to be prepared. You have to, sometimes have it, like I said, answered, or the response or solution prepared in advance. So you can say, oh, not only is this a good idea, but here's what I did. Here's why it's a good idea. So, I mean, it takes a lot of extra effort sometimes, but I would also follow up on, as far as mentors and contacts go, I am just like Fatima, where, you have those close friends who you keep in your pocket and will do anything for you. And I mean, it's very important just to even like touch base. I mean, just last night I went on LinkedIn to just contact a legislator I knew, get information. He sent me all this information a day. And I mean, it's just empowering to just, you know, keep your friends, and then you get connections and contacts, and having those good relationships is everything. And I will say, like, I think for me, you know, just like checking in every now and then, even though when you're not like contacting them, just, hey, thinking about you, or I'll sometimes send them like a funny story or a meme, or you know, something that's like
Yeah.
personal that we have a history or background on, just to let them know like I still think about them, still appreciate them. And, you know, genuinely like thanking them, or providing, you know, like sending a little note.
Definitely.
And, you know, when you find good people like that, who they're sometimes hard to find, you know, ones that just stick with you through the years, and you can call up without any notice and they'll do anything they can to help you, you know, you have to take care of them and foster it. And as far as just outreach in general, I would say don't be afraid to just reach out to new people, make new contacts. If you think somebody could be helpful, like as other people had mentioned, you know, they're not going to be like, oh no, we don't want you in the group. You know what I mean? I think it's just take the initiative, find out who could be helpful, make the good friends, use connections, but also take care of your good connections, because they will be there every step of the way in your career moving forward.
Definitely, like building that network is a really key piece there. And then I also want to speak to those that are later on in their career and hoping to take their career to the next level in the technology space. Sherilyn and Luana, what advice do you have for folks who are hoping to enter that C-suite or director level? Let's start with Sherilyn.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I mean, I think just building on, you know, what Kara was just talking about the importance of having networks. I think that the folks that reach kind of highest levels in an organization are not necessarily, you know, the most technical. They might not be the most qualified, but they certainly knew the right people. And so really underscoring the importance of, you know, building networks, building friends, understanding how to work with people. Those are not skills that you necessarily learn in school, but you certainly learn them in life as you go along. And for me, you know, I get very busy, I get very immersed in my work, and sometimes I forget, you know, oh, I need to go have lunch, I need to have coffees. And I think it's a little easier for guys to just, you know, go to the bar with their friends or go to golf with their colleagues than it is sometimes for women. So what I do is I actually schedule time on my calendar every Thursday. I always have lunch with somebody on my team, and every Friday I always have lunch with somebody externally, and I always do it in person because you know we've lived on teams for for a long time, but I think being in person is really important. So really focused on, you know, building a network and always reconnecting, you know, with the people that we know is really helpful. I also find it, you know, once you get to a certain level, you do have to fight to stay there, and you have to fight to continue growing. So I'm always focused on continuing to learn. I read a lot. I have the, you know, free books that I get from the library through the Libby app on my phone. So every night before I go to bed, I'm always reading and trying to learn more. And then finally, you know, somebody mentioned kind of self-care. For me, when I'm not working, I'm, you know, with my family, I'm doing yoga, I'm meditating, because when I'm at work, I need to be there, you know, 100% for my team, helping, you know, the center, being focused on the work that we need to do. I can't be focused on, oh, you know, somebody said so and so to me, or this happened at home, which can sometimes be difficult. So really important on kind of being there, being present, and just being there for your team.
Definitely. And Luana, can you speak to that piece as well of how do you take your career to that next level? Advice for those that are hoping to reach those new heights.
I think Kara had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Kara.
I did. I apologize. I just wanted to follow up on something Sherilyn said that was really meaningful to me. And it's just when you say about taking time for people and engaging personal level, I think something I'd written down as a note was just actually taking time to remember details about their life and be able to, hey, how is so and so doing? What's going on? And like, making sure that the people who are in your corner all the time know that you are always listening and that they are very important to you and you haven't forgotten about them. You don't want to approach people with just simply asking and asking, you want to engage and be like, how are you doing? And like be proactive about keeping in touch. And I would just, say that if I have to go into meetings with like a cold, like no personal relationship, I always try to find out a little bit about their background and find a level to connect with them, So if I go to the legislator's office in DC, okay, I find a connection. I feel like it's honestly like surprising how much people are willing to like open up and share because they want to be able to talk about themselves, their life, their experiences. And I think that making sure that you're asking questions and engaging and hearing and learning about somebody else is a critical part of building those key contacts. So, just instead of just asking and trying to build, just, care about the other person and keep their thoughts and their personal interests in mind. And I think it goes a long way. That's all I wanted to add on to that.
I love that. I love how you both spoke to that proactive piece and kind of thinking about the other person as you're doing that networking. And sometimes it can feel almost like selfish when you're networking, but you're always thinking about that other person and making sure you're keeping them at the forefront. Luana, what advice do you have for those that are, again, trying to take that career to the next level and trying to leverage all the networks that they have?
Yeah, just to add a little bit more, because I think Sherilyn really captured a majority of that. But what I've noticed in my own career, really, to get to that next level, 20% really of it is about skill, and the 80% really is around your strategy and how you do that. So the skill, of course, continue to hone your skills, take classes. There's free classes online. There's certifications. I mean, there's all kinds of learning opportunities for women out there to actually bring their skills up. But the other piece of it really is around being strategic. So if you know that there's a next level you're trying to get to, just be really fearless about it and do everything that you need to do to get to that level, which includes networking. So joining associations, reaching out to your mentors, reaching out to coaches, and just be very strategic about it and just not giving up and be very intentional. So that's the only thing I wanted to add on.
Thank you. And we have 10 minutes left, so I want to encourage more people to put their questions into the chat, but we'll start with Jordana's question. So she says, I hate that I'm even asking this, but how do you move away from the stereotype that women are too sensitive to feelings all the time and apologize too much? Or when someone is rude or surprised about you leading, how do you respond? Keep going, address the rudeness. So we're kind of looking for some tips and tricks about those situations. If anyone would like to jump in and answer, please feel free.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go, please. I beg you.
I'm not gonna
I'm about to have
apologize.
like verbal diarrhea, so I beg you to go first.
I'm not going to apologize for wanting to go first. I mean, I think there are different approaches depending on the context. I can think of an instance a couple months ago, we had an event, and this is very invisible to the panelists who were speaking about kind of their career journey. And it was a women's sort of in technology event. And I guess there were people in the back who were being really, really rude. But those of us in the front, like we couldn't hear it to address it. But there were several women sitting in the front row that went to the back to kind of confront the rudeness. So sometimes I think people in the audience will sort of be the upstanders and address it for you. Generally, I think two different approaches. One is just kind of keep moving, like, be the boss lady that you are, and just keep moving. And I think other people see like that's just rude behavior. The other thing is you could embarrass them right back. Like, excuse me, I'm speaking, kind of that approach too. But I think it really just depends on the context.
definitely. Fatima.
Well, I was gonna actually, Kara, do you want to chime in here?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, it's hard. I mean, it's just one of those you don't, and I'm not very good at this. It doesn't matter. I just sometimes have trouble. My face says things even if I don't verbalize them. I would be a terrible poker player. So you can say something if I'm upset about it or mad about it, it's like I can't like undo it. So I don't have any advice on that particular thing, but I believe like taking the high road and maybe just trying to put it behind you. And sometimes r- not that there's anything wrong with being able to stand up to people, but I think sometimes when you don't acknowledge people, it can be as powerful as well, and just not even acknowledging them and what they say, because that's probably what they're seeking is attention. So just be the better person and move on, but also maybe work on, I don't have it. Maybe there's an online course I could take for it, but it's definitely on my to-do list is how to, mask my internal emotions that appear on my face.
I mean,
But
if
in some ways, it's nice. Yeah.
Victoria, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna quickly, I'm like, as the angry Latina, which everybody, like, it's just like, there's always one that's supposed to be like in the teams. Look, stop apologizing. Stop apologizing. Just do it. Just stop it. And that was really hard for me because this is coming from a person, again, how I grew up, it was always like, yes, ma'am. Okay, follow orders, do the thing, like put your head down. And I apologize for everything, everything. I would breathe, I would apologize. I would do this, I would apologize. So coming from someone who, has had that environment, that upbringing, and essentially that personality, I literally had to seek ways that I then had to learn, okay, how do I stop apologizing? And it was like a gut reaction that I had to stop, almost like saying when you're talking and just like, okay, how do I stop saying that? And then finding alternative ways to say, I'm not sorry, instead of saying, I'm not sorry. And it's like, well, instead of saying, I'm sorry, okay, this happened. I hear you. Let's figure out a solution for this, right? And so there's different ways and different verbal interchanges that you can leverage to say, okay, well, I'm comfortable saying not sorry. Let's move on from this and let's keep moving forward. And I think to me, that really helped me to then in my mind almost embed that to say, well, I'm not saying sorry, but I have something that I want to say. We're going to keep moving forward. I genuinely do want to work on with this person, or and at the end of the day, I'm not perfect either. So when I am sorry, I will say I'm sorry, and I actually mean it, because I'm not perfect. So I think it's just making sure that you're checking yourself and being very intentional with the I'm sorry, because the I'm sorry is extremely powerful. You're giving away your power when you say I'm sorry. So you have to be very, very careful about that.
I do have to
Definitely.
chime in on
Yeah.
that and say that is not necessarily in work, but in other situations, I found myself apologizing even when I don't think I've done wrong. And it's something I think that like chips away at your confidence and your respect. So I think that it's
Definitely.
very important just in general to make sure if you're apologizing, you're actually meaning it. And to your point, like if there's any advice you can do or say on that, I think it's very valuable because it does translate into workspaces where you almost sometimes find yourself like saying, "Oh, sorry if this is a dumb question." You
Definitely.
don't want to,
Yeah.
you lose your confidence sometimes when other people get in your head. So
And you
I
kind of
think,
have to, like, as you spoke about a little bit earlier, different approaches for different situations, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I want to make sure we get to Luana and Sherilyn. Luana, you go first. What's your response to that audience question about how do you kind of find your voice?
So I would agree with everything that's been said so far, and it is situational, so it really depends. If you are going to actually encounter this often, I would as Fatima said earlier, invest in getting an executive coach to really help you
Mm-hmm.
do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I actually have an executive coach as well, because sometimes we're not self-aware. There could be blind spots and things that we're not aware of. So use an executive coach also in that instance. And I'll just share, I had an incident yesterday where I was in a meeting and got very upset. And it takes a lot for me to get upset. I try not to show my emotion. I don't have a poker face either. And I found myself raising my voice. And I wasn't going to apologize because I felt very strongly about my opinion. For the folks in the room, I mean, it was just like, oh, well, I'm going to voice my opinion, and that's pretty much it. So I just wanted to share that. Don't apologize. Just
Definitely.
be the boss that you are.
I love that. Be the boss that you are. Thank you. And I want to make sure we get to as many audience questions as we can. So someone's asking about, did you ever acquire sponsorship in your career path as opposed to mentorship? And how did you go about acquiring that? I see Luana has her hand raised. Do you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I was just going to mention early on in my career, Ursula Burns, who was the first Black woman to lead a Fortune 500 company at Xerox. She started her career early as a female engineer, right, in a strong male-dominated industry. And so I sought her to be my mentor, but really her role in the organization, she was able to actually be a sponsor. So she ensured that there were opportunities and jobs that I was able to get to kind of build up my skill base. And she was willing to do that because she actually, we connected, and she could understand where it was that I was coming from. I was trying to get to a space in my career, and she was able to do that for me. And so again, I'm not apologizing for that. A lot of what she taught me, I still believe in it and remember to this day.
That's powerful. I think acquiring that sponsorship, knowing that right person, and taking advantage of that opportunity. On that same note of taking your career to the next level, someone is asking about, how do you ask for a promotion when you're a qualified position but not eligible based on eligibility standards? So how do you go about having that conversation? Does anybody have any advice about that? Maybe Sherilyn?
I mean, I'm not sure about the eligibility standards. I mean, I think the one point of advice I would say is you definitely need to ask for a promotion. I think your bosses do not know what you want. So you have to make it really clear that you want a promotion, that you want to advance, that you have a plan to get there, that you discuss it with, your boss. If you're not eligible, I mean, think about if there's ways to change that. If not, I think lateral moves are sometimes also a really good thing to consider as well. If there's no opportunities for promotion at where you're at, make a move to somewhere else.
Definitely. It's an opportunity to be vocal in a way and stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself, as we said a lot of times on the panel. For our last question, I want to make sure we get to all of our panelists. I'd love for you all to just say the word that comes to your mind when you think about the future of women in technology. Kara, you can start. I see your hand.
I was just raising my hand to actually follow up on what Sherilyn said about the eligibility and promotion opportunities. I would just follow up on that and say, if there's a space or an opportunity you want to see, I would just take the initiative and probably start doing the work and show that you're willing and able to take it on, and
Definitely.
So what's the question, the word?
A word that comes to your mind when you think about women in technology, the future of women in technology.
Everything.
I love that. Jamie, what is a word that comes to mind when you think about the future of women in technology?
Sparkly.
I love that. Fatima, what is a word that comes to mind when you think about the future of women in technology?
Power.
Amazing. Sherilyn, what about you?
Beautiful.
I love that. And Luana, what's the word that comes to mind?
I said it earlier, but fearless.
Thank you. These are perfect. I want to just thank all of our audience for participating and all of our panelists for bringing all of your insightful and experience to the table for everyone here. I hope that you all walked away with some new learnings that you can take with you to the workplace, and I'm so excited for the conversation to continue. Thank you to everyone, and we hope to see you at our next panel discussion.
Hey, Fatima.